Well, hello, and we find ourselves today in Florida, just coming into Tampa, delivering this new RV from the factory in Elkhart to a monstrous dealership down here, and I'll show it to you a little bit later, and one of the largest I've ever been in. But I wanted to explain to you about air conditioning and heating of these RV units. You see, the RV unit, at least the drive part of it, is not designed to keep this thing cold or warm while you're driving down the road. It just is not a big enough system to offset all of the square footage. Now, this is a fairly small one, so it does a halfway decent job at keeping you cold. But if you get any larger than a 30-footer, you're going to have a hard time keeping warm or cold in that unit, depending on the weather. Now, there's a little trick to it that will solve that problem. What you do is you stop at Lowe's or Walmart and get about a clamp that'll open up about 6 inches. And this looks like like an alligator clip, and some of them have a ratchet to lock them on. I'll try to get one out and show it to you a little bit later. But I buy 3 of them just in case. I take the comforter off from the bed, and then I find a place on the door right behind the driver's seat and above the dinner table, as close as you can get to the driver's seat without interfering with them. And I clamp that comforter on to build a fake wall right behind the driver. And you will find that the system in the engine is more than adequate to keep that ice cold or toasty warm in the wintertime. Because I know them big diesel pushers, there's no way to warm them up in the wintertime without using this method. I also have a comforter in my van, which I do not hesitate to bring out, the big fluffy thing. If the one in the bed doesn't work or it doesn't cover the area, I have a big one in my van that I pull out and I use to build that fake wall just behind the driver to keep that hot or cold, whichever way you want. Because you literally can freeze to death in each unit or just bake yourself to death. Because that'll get it so that you can control the temperature right up there at the driver. Now, also I had mentioned that these are white glove leather seats. I mean pure white. It's deadly for a driver, because the first place that inspector is going to go is straight to the driver's seat to inspect it. They want to find any dirt, smudges, tears, anything, stains, and that's going to come out of your pocket, that first $1,000. They're very expensive seats in here. I bring a white towel for the seat, and I bungee it on, or you can tie it on with string as best you want. And I also bring one for the floor, because especially if it's a diesel unit, these truck stops are pig pens when it comes to fueling. And you will get that diesel all over your feet, and you will carry it in the RV with you, and just inadvertently you will walk back on the carpet one day and there will be a big greasy footprint with your name on it and your price tag on that greasy footprint. And they're going to talk about replacing that entire piece of carpet in that RV. Now, they never really will. They'll just clean it. But that's not what they're going to tell you. They'll charge you for a brand new one, plus removal of the old one and installation of the new one. That's just the way the game is played. If you're not willing to play the game this way, go back to McDonald's and keep flipping them burgers. Now, when you're coming up on delivery, watch your fuel gauge. You want to leave everything pretty much with a 1/4 of a tank in it. So as you're driving down the road and you get down to a 1/4 of a tank, figure out how many miles you have left and calculate how many miles you thought you were getting to the gallon. This particular one gets 11.8 miles to the gallon. I have 100 miles to go, so I take 100 and divide it by 11.8, and then I add a couple of gallons just in case, because you don't want to have to be searching for fuel at the last minute. And that's just $10 you're going to sacrifice to each unit. Now, if you don't calculate it right, you can be sacrificing $25 to $50 per unit, and I've done that before. Make a simple miscalculation, put too much fuel in, and give it away. On the other hand, it has to be a quarter. If it is not a quarter, two of the three companies that I work for will fine you $40 to fuel that tank up to a quarter. Well, even if it's a dribble under. And that inspector is looking for that reason. So you want to make sure that needle is on a quarter or just above. And I like to have it just above so there's no question. If there's a question in your mind, take a picture before you accept the vehicle and make sure you get the mileage in there, and then take one at the end. It's a plain game of cover your ass out here. So you've got to do it on every turn. Now I'll be the first to admit, in the old days when I was young and stupid and just started transporting, I wanted to set the world on fire and get everything moved I could, and I would push myself until I was fighting the wheel to try to stay awake and in my own lane. I'm too old for that now. The money doesn't mean anything to me. I just like getting different places and working on a couple of documentaries that lead it, so I need to be in a certain part of the country at a certain time. That's what I use transporting for. You can use it to pay the bills if you want to. I'm not in that position. I need it to get me to where I need to go when I need to go there. So I'm on my way here to Florida to visit a sick niece and see my son and see my cousin who's just fallen in love at 75 years old, madly in love, and also an old friend, a college buddy's oldest daughter who's down here in psychology college. So it's, you know, I visit everybody I can while I'm down here. Plus my granddaughter's down here now too, going to school. So I'll try to hit everybody and say hi. My wife has 3 different relatives that are down this way in Florida. If I get a chance, I'll visit them too. One of them happens to be a very excellent fisherman, and I plan on cashing in on the fishing down here while I'm here. Don't tell my wife I said that though. Now, while I have your attention and we're going down the road, 2 out of the 3 companies, well, really 1.5 out of the 3 companies that I work with, do not want you to have any passengers in your vehicle when you're moving it. One of them strictly doesn't want any passengers, but I find out from the 500 drivers that they have that everybody brings a deadhead driver with them if they can. A deadhead driver drives the miles that you are not going to be paid for to get to the next vehicle, or if you take a vehicle, say out to California, and you got to drive all the way back, that's what that deadhead driver is for. So you'll split the driving with that person to ease the pressure on yourself of driving all those miles. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of people out here that drive a vehicle from the factory in Elkhart all the way to Nova Scotia or California or Oregon or Florida, and they drive all the way back. In my book, that's crazy. That's cut your profit more than in half, and it eats your health and your vehicle up. So I don't do many deadheads if I get away with it. I'll find one of the other companies. If the first company doesn't supply me with a load, I'll sit on it for a day or so while I'm looking at the other companies to find myself a way out of there. It doesn't always work, but it works about 85% of the time, which is fine with me. It's just starting to rain like crazy, and I'm telling you, these Florida roads are very, very slippery, even on damp, dewy mornings. They make them out of eggshells instead of gravel at times. And man, they are slicker than grease when it's wet. Oh, I forgot to mention, there is no transport company out here that allows pets. Now, some trucking firms now are allowing cats and dogs, small ones, but you see some people with great big monster dogs, Great Danes and whatever, and monster-sized wives too, that they bring along with them. 2 of the 3 companies that I have, if they caught you with a pet of any sort in that vehicle, you're immediately fired. And you're going to pay the $350 to steam clean that vehicle. I know that from experience. Okay, now we're talking, this is just one chapter of all kinds of bull that's popping into my head. When you get in these vehicles, you'll notice that they have a television, they have a generator, they have a microwave. Well, that's kind of cool, but in the past, drivers have run that generator for, say, sometimes 20, 30 hours waiting for a place to accept a load over the weekend or whatever, or some of them would just take the things and go camping for a couple of days. They now check the time on that generator, and when the customer looks at it and there's 60 hours on a brand new generator, something's not right. They're going to ask for another generator, and it'll go back to the driver and be put off as driver damage. And I've heard of them, I've never done it myself, but I've heard of them replacing the generator with a brand new one with no hours on it at the driver's expense. Realistically, I find out later that they just replaced the gauge that had the hours on it, put a brand new gauge on it, but they did happen to charge the driver the $6,000 exchange for a new one, and they realistically cost $12,000. So I'm just trying to say, teach you how to cover your butt. Myself, I don't ever start the generators anymore. I don't run them. I don't start them and watch the TV. I don't plug the units in. Now, especially the used ones, or new ones. The used ones, like your Cruise America and that, it doesn't hurt to run the generator a little bit and watch TV, maybe a movie, because these are already well used with at least 50,000 a piece. Some of them have almost 300,000 miles on them, so they aren't going to complain, and some of them even let you plug in overnight if you get there early. But that is not true with the new ones. My suggestion, don't even touch any of the stuff on there, especially like the microwave or in the generator, television or anything. Don't plug it in. If anything blows, you got to buy it.